and welcome to 4,000 Accounting. I'm Watty, and today I am joined by Fife Flyers head coach Jamie Russell. Jamie, welcome to 4,000 Accounting.
Thanks, Nikki. Happy to be here.
So we were just touching a little bit on off air. I kind of want to go a bit old school with this because looking through your elite prospects here, you've been at some really prestigious schools in North America. You had a very long, successful collegiate career in coaching, but I wanted to go even further back than that. What got you into the love of the sport, and what got you into ice hockey to start you off?
Well, I grew up in Western Canada, so a lot of times you're born with skates coming out of the womb. So my older brother played, and just grew up loving the game. If I wasn't playing on the ice or the outdoor rink in the summer, was playing street hockey, road hockey, playing at school, and just hockey from day one.
So if you were the younger brother, were you in goal? Like your big brothers, like fucking come on, let's chuck you in goal here.
Actually, I had an older brother who was 8 years older than me, and
Okay.
he used to beat the crap out of me, and
Yeah.
kind of learned how to take care of myself from getting beat up by my older brother.
What um what was it like having that older brother, someone you aspire to kind of chase and follow?
He was fantastic. 8 years is a pretty big age gap. So I was 10 years old when he moved out of the house. So, but it was a big day for me when I got to tag along with my older brother and his friends.
So there's a lot less information out there about your playing stats than there is about your coaching stats. But I was just looking. I didn't realize you were from Kamloops. You're a BC boy. I used to spend a lot of time in Penticton there, just up the road.
Yeah, the Okanagan, absolutely. Yeah, I was born in North Vancouver and then moved up to Kamloops. Grew up in Kamloops, and then I left home, went the NCAA route, and played college hockey. But beautiful area in the interior of British Columbia.
Oh, so cool. Such an absolute spot. So growing up out west, obviously you touched on the fact that you went down the collegiate route. Was the BCHL or the West Coast ever on your radar? Were you on their radar? Where did you kind of stand going into that? Because obviously you end up going to Michigan Tech, so you go to a big school.
Yeah, I was a classic late developer. I grew really late. I in high school I played a lot of different sports, but I wrestled in grade nine, and
Nice.
in the 45 kilos and under, which is less than
45
100 pounds.
kilos.
So I was a little guy, and that's typically the age that you start to get on the radar for the Western Hockey League. And in that area, the Western Hockey League was big, tough, physical hockey, and I weighed less than 100 pounds. So that wasn't really in the cards for me. I grew a lot later. I didn't grow until I was about 17. I found my way into the weight room, put on a lot of pounds, and then when I did make the trek down to the NCAA, I was 6'1", 200 pounds. So classic late developer, grew late, and didn't play at a ton of high levels growing up. In Canada, rep hockey at that time, Kamloops was a city of about 70,000 people, a lot of hockey players, and there's one rep team city. So different path for me, but found my way to the NCAA and had a great experience at Michigan Tech.
So when you went to Michigan Tech, did you get like a tour of the school? Were they showing you around, or were you just being like more than happy to jump at the first team that offered you to fucking go play some NCAA?
Yeah, no, it was certainly a recruiting process. I had a few schools to choose from, and probably the biggest factor at that time, when I was at Michigan Tech, there was four of us from Kamloops.
Oh wow.
Previously, there was a pretty good pipeline of players. Tim Waters, who played in the National Hockey League, is from Kamloops. Ward Sparrow, Eddie Dempsey were Kamloops guys that had a little bit older than me that had gone to Michigan Tech, and talking to them, they had a great experience and said that would be a fantastic choice. So there was definitely a pipeline and a connection between Kamloops and Michigan Tech.
What was the games against Michigan State like?
We were actually in a different league. We did
Oh,
play
you didn't play
Michigan
them though.
State. Yeah, we played Michigan State, Michigan, and then they would rotate the fourth team in a tournament at Christmas, the Great Lakes Invitational. It
Cool.
was played at Joe Louis Arena where the Red Wings used to
Unreal.
play, and it was 20,000 people. And for a guy in his early 20s to play in an NHL building with a packed house was an unbelievable experience. So we always played Michigan State in the Great Lakes tournament, but at that time, the WCHA, the league that Tech was in, was a lot of the big boys with the University of Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, Denver, Duluth. So it was a gauntlet of teams, and Tech has a very proud history. Had won 3 national championships, so it was a school that was very appealing in the recruiting process for me to go to.
What was it when you're playing in that Great Lakes there at Joe Louis? Was it just a bunch of students in the building getting after it? Because obviously you got everybody's pretty local, right? With really good atmosphere, good vibe.
Yeah, great atmosphere. It was a little, excuse me, a little bit different atmosphere than the pro game because you have the college students that are there, you have the bands that are in the building that are playing. There's a huge alumni base in the Detroit area. Michigan Tech is primarily an engineering school. With the auto industry being in Detroit, there's a lot of Michigan Tech alums that work in the Detroit area. So great fan base and great experience at the GLI.
When you were growing up, were you academic, or was that just you went to more went to college to more focus on your hockey, or did you have quite a good academic side as well?
It's safe to say I was more for hockey.
Yeah.
I did okay in school. I basically did well enough in school so that I was eligible to play hockey. I definitely went to school, for the hockey side of things. After I was done playing a few years of pro, I did go back to school and took school a lot more seriously and got a master's degree. But in my undergrad, definitely it was hockey first and did what I needed to do to get by in school.
Did you find it easier going back, like being a bit more mature and having the sole focus just being on studies?
100%. Yes. Yes. And to be honest, it's difficult when you're a Division 1 athlete in the NCAA, to balance the demands of athletics with the college. You're traveling. For us, we're flying out to Denver to play a weekend series. You leave on Thursday, so you miss class Thursday, Friday. You get back, you play Friday, Saturday, you get back late Sunday night. You get a class Monday morning at 8 o'clock. It's certainly
Uh,
challenging. Balancing what you're doing with hockey and the academics.
and obviously college is supposed to be fun too, right? So you want to have a little bit of downtime with the boys and maybe let loose on a Sunday night. So I imagine, those Monday morning classes probably hit like a ton of bricks, eh?
Yeah, the college experience is fantastic. You're at a just an amazing stage of your life. You live with your teammates. You train with them. You play games. You travel. You're all the same age for the most part. You're all single. It's just a great point in your life. You become really really close to your college teammates. It's a little bit different in pro hockey. You might have an 18-year-old rookie, and you might have a 35-year-old veteran who's married with 2 kids. So
Yeah.
there's different things going on away from the rink, but college, everybody, the fan base is a lot of times your peers. They're the same age as you, and it's one of the best times of your life being a college athlete.
Well, I remember when I first started skating with the Bison in the Elite League. I'd have been 14, coming on 15. You're sitting in a room. I'm like, I'm still at school. And the guy next to me is fucking divorced, and this guy is talking about having to pick the kids up on the weekend. It was just like we're at very different stages of our lives. But I like the hockey brings that together in the pro game. You do have these young 18, 19-year-old guys breaking through, and you got guys that are ultimately on the tail end with a bunch of experience that they can pass on, and hopefully the young guys have the good attitude to take that experience on board. You went on and played 4 games in the AHL. Was that straight out of your last year in the NCAA?
No, actually, as an undrafted free agent, I had some offers to go as a free agent to training camp with a couple of teams, and an opportunity came up to go to Sweden. So I actually went
Oh,
overseas
nice.
right from college. I played in Kristianstad in the south of Sweden. Um, didn't mind the hockey. Ended up leaving Kristianstad, going back to North America. Went to the East Coast League and played for Chris McSorley down in Winston-Salem, and had a pretty good second half of the year, and ended up getting called up to Binghamton in the
Nice.
American League. So I played about the last month in Binghamton, was kind of in and out of the lineup, trying to get my feet wet, and then went back to Winston-Salem for the playoffs that year.
What was the East Coast like back then? Because obviously, was it just the fucking even worse of a jungle than it was in like the 2010s?
Yeah, it was. You're talking late '80s, early '90s. So most teams had 4 to 5 heavyweights on their team. My coach was Chris McSorley, who's Marty's brother. I
Yeah.
think Chris set a minor league record for penalty minutes. So um, John Brophy was a coach in the league. It was old style 1980s hockey, and it was an adventure for sure.
They were a couple of weeks back. I was listening. I can't remember who was on Chicklets, but they were talking about Brophy and just being a fucking loose cannon. This guy just, um, it made me check him out. And actually, some of the stories about him are so good. What's some of your most like kind of memorable moments from playing down in the coast?
That year, the first year with Chris, we had a really good team. We won the regular season. We went all the way
Nice.
to the finals of the Kelly Cup playoffs. So really, really good group of guys, and kind of amazing that you look back at that roster, the guys that went on and made careers beyond their playing days, whether it's, John Torchetti, who was a longtime coach and became a head coach in the National Hockey League, and Joey Ferris is a scout with the New Jersey Devils. Ron Ralston, who I played college hockey with and went overseas to Sweden, was a coach at the U.S. Development Program,
Nice.
head coach in the American Hockey League, ended up being the head coach of the Buffalo Sabres, and is now at Providence College as a coach. So just from that small group of guys that went on, Brad Treliving was on that
Yeah.
team. Actually, that would have been the second year. He's obviously the general manager with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the group of guys in Winston-Salem that went beyond their playing days and carved out careers in hockey is pretty incredible.
You got into coaching at like a young age. What was it that made you get into coaching? Was the career not going the way you wanted it? Was there an injury, like, or was it just something that you knew that you wanted to ultimately always be a head coach?
I think I always wanted to be in the game. Um, you know, uh, had an opportunity to go to Ferris State and work with Bob Daniels, who just retired after last year, 30 some odd years as the head coach at Ferris State, and
Oh,
was a great opportunity. In those days, your coaching staff was 3 coaches, a head coach and 2 assistant coaches, and a lot of your responsibility as an assistant coach is the recruiting. So you're scouting, you're on the road, you're finding the players, you're recruiting the players, you're bringing them into the program. And when I started at Ferris State, the school had actually reviewed the program. There was some discussion whether they were going to keep the program, fold the program. So we brought in 13 players in our first recruiting class, and it was a rebuilding process. And the last class that I recruited at Ferris, I was there 5 years, won the CCHA, and was an NCAA tournament team. So it was at a low point when I started, and felt like after 5 years, really left it in a good spot.
what's your relationship like over those 5 years with the head coach? Obviously, you said he went on to be there for 30 years, so he's definitely done something right. But what was it like being the new guy, being the young guy, like and stepping into this assistant role?
Well, Bob Daniels, for those people that know him, he's just an awesome person. He's one of the funniest men, and you spend so much time together as a staff. You're doing everything together. It's long days. And I didn't have any coaching experience, and so I was a sponge, just so grateful for the opportunity, and worked my butt off. Spent a lot of days on the road recruiting, whether it's in the middle of Saskatchewan in February, looking for players, or out in British Columbia or the USHL. It's lots of travel, and you've got your recruiting hat on, and then you come back to campus, and you're coaching and trying to develop players. And Bob was a great man to work for, treated us really well, and learned a ton from him. So it was a fantastic opportunity for me, and dove in with both feet, and just love my experience at Ferris.
When it comes down to it in the NCAA, I mean, it is a results business, obviously, same as any hockey. But crucially, you just touched on it there, develop players. How did you guys run the balance of doing a practice where it's not just flow drills and PP practice, it's actually development and making these players better so that they're ready to go on and have serious pro careers on the back of their NCAA career?
Yeah, there's a couple parts to that. The college schedule is the games are on Friday and Saturday. So Sunday's usually a day off. You're practicing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So your practice to game ratio is 2-1. So it's a combination of you want to incorporate individual skill development, position specific skill development with defensemen, goaltenders, forwards. Then there's team tactics, your systems. Then you have a strength coach. Players are in the weight room twice a week developing off the ice. And then it's really different. You get kids that are between the ages of usually 18 to 24. So you're really developing people as well. And, them a lot of times in those days, it was the first time they'd been away from home. A lot of the guys had played junior hockey, been away from home, but you're not staying with a billet, and it's if you're living in an apartment, it's taking care of your bills and cooking and becoming an adult and balancing the academics of a good academic institution and Division I hockey. And the change that you see in a player when he steps in at 18, 19, or 20, and when he walks out the door 4 years later, easiest way to say it, he comes in a boy and leaves a man. And you hear all the success stories of a Matt Molson, a Doug Murray, a John Scott that goes on and plays in the National Hockey League. That you had a piece in helping them develop on the ice, but there's so many guys that whether they go on to be a surgeon or really successful in the financial world and become great fathers and do incredible things off the ice. That's a big part of it, and a big part of the college experience.
Did you ever have a situation, obviously I'm sure you must have in the length of collegiate career you had, where guys' GPA was falling down and the school were like, right, you don't fucking play if you don't get the GPA up. Do you ever have it where you have to sit guys in the stands until they improved on their studies?
No question. Yeah, that's part of your responsibility. Now things have evolved. I started in 1994, so that was a long time ago. Now college staffs, they've got a director of hockey operations. There's 3 assistant coaches. There's academic support. There's just a huge staff that takes care of a lot of the off ice things, and an assistant coach essentially just recruits and coaches. When I started, it was you're doing itineraries, you're working with rooming lists, you're doing meals on the road, you're overseeing the academic progress of students. So, to answer your question, yeah, there was times somebody's struggling in school, and 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday, you're as an assistant coach standing outside in the hallway of a classroom, making sure that guy's up out of bed and he's going to class, and making sure that he's getting things done. You can be the best hockey player in the world, but if you're academically ineligible, you can't play. So, monitoring, student athletes' progress in the classroom so that they are taking care of things. And because you can let things pile up in a hurry. hey, we just got back late last night. I'm not going to go to class. I've got time. I can do this paper later. And then all of a sudden that mountain becomes huge. So you got to make sure that students are organized. Time management is critical because of all the demands of playing hockey and going to school.
Yeah. So I got ADHD, so I have the thing of, yeah, I'll do it later, and then a 10-minute problem becomes a fucking 3-month problem. And then you put it off for 3 months, and yep, right away you do it. 10 minutes, it's like, come on. And it is just that needing someone sometimes to just give you that kick up the backside and be like, right, you need to go to class, you need to go get this, and especially if. Right, again to talk about chicklets once more. It's another story I heard of on there. You know, some guys have like serious majors, like you say, they're going to go on and be in finance, and are going to be on, that are going to go and be a surgeon. And then you have the other guys, and they talk about studying like the history of Boston, like just the fucking, just to turn up, and they're going to give you a grade. Thanks for coming. Those guys are probably already guaranteed to be going to the show that can come in and just do such a small class. What was the kind of, because not everybody's massively academic. What was the kind of like the bottom end guys? What were they trying to study? What were they trying to do just to get through that school year just so they could play hockey?
Well, it's an interesting question because I worked in 20 years of college hockey coaching. I worked at 4 different schools in 4 different leagues, two in the West, two in the East, and they were very different academically. Ferris State had some very good academic programs, but in terms of the demands academically at Ferris State, they would be towards the lower end of academia. The second place I coached was Cornell University, which is an Ivy League school, which is one of the best academic institutions in the world. So the caliber of students that you were dealing with at Cornell, the player pool, it was interesting because I had to deal with a lot of players because academically the list of guys that you can get in and get accepted to the school is very small. So you had to deal with a lot of players because this might be a great hockey player, but he's not going to get accepted to the school. So the schools were very different in terms of the academic demands. I remember from Ferris State, there was a practice where where's Stevie today? Oh, he hurt his foot. I go, what are you talking about? He hurt his foot. Like I was doing skills with him after practice yesterday, and we got off the ice at the same time. He never hurt his foot. What do you mean he hurt his foot? No, he hurt his foot in class. I go, he hurt his foot in class. How the hell do you do that? Well, he's in construction management. Somebody dropped a
All
ladder on
right.
his foot. And
Yeah,
I
I
was
do
like, you
it.
gotta be kidding me. So, the construction management major at Fair State was a little different than biomedical engineering at Cornell University. So, pretty different range of academic criteria involved in those two majors.
What was the thinking and the reasoning for stepping from Ferris State over to Cornell?
So I was the second assistant at Ferris State and had an opportunity to move up to be a first assistant at Cornell. More responsibility, and then little different situation. Cornell was a school that had won 2 national championships, and long history, developed players, Joe Newendike, Ken Dryden,
Oh wow.
a lot of NHL players. So worked with Mike Schaefer, and my last year at Cornell, we were undefeated, untied at home. We won the regular season. We won the ECAC playoffs. We won the East Regional and advanced to the NCAA Frozen Four. So a lot of success at Cornell, and different experience working at an Ivy League school.
How old was you when you took the job at Cornell?
I was 5 years at Ferris State, then I went to Cornell, and I was 4 years at Cornell, and then I got the head coaching job back at my alma mater at Michigan Tech.
So when you were Michigan Tech, what age were you then when you took that head coach's job for the first time?
Oh, I probably was 36, 37.
Was that quite a rare thing back then to have a head coach be so young?
It was on the younger side, but I don't think it was unheard of by any means. I'd been an assistant coach for 9 years and had success at both Ferris and Cornell. So it was an opportunity that I felt I was ready for, and heading back to my own water. My wife's from that area, so it was in a sense heading home.
So obviously you said like when you was assistant, a big part of your job there is to do the recruiting. Now that you're the head coach, how important was it for you to have good assistant coaches around you that you could send out to go and do recruiting and know that we're fucking on the money and they were not going to bring you some terrible guys, going to bring you some good studs.
That's the key. You're as a head coach, your lifeblood is your assistant coaches, because the demands of the job as a head coach, you're not on the road, you're not evaluating players, you're not seeing them, you don't know the player pool as well. So you really have to trust your assistant coaches, and that's a huge part of your success is your ability to have good players. And Jack Parker's a legendary coach, coached a long time at Boston University, and one of his quotes was, people would ask him what made you so successful at BU, and he developed a lot of guys that went on and got into coaching, and his advice to them was always, when you get off the bus, make sure that your players getting off the bus are better than the players that you're playing, and that makes you a really good coach.
That helps. That definitely helps. So you actually ended up being a head coach at Michigan Tech for 8 years. Did you imagine when you signed on the dotted line that you were going to be there 8 years later?
Yeah, it was obviously a place I was very comfortable with, having played there, and then two of my three sons were born in the UP of Michigan, so the early part of their life was growing up there, and it was a great league. It was the old WCHA before the Big Ten was formed, and in my 8 years in the WCHA, a WCHA team won the national championship 6 of those years.
Oh wow.
Players that were coming out of the league, Jonathan Taves, Zach
Unreal.
Parisi, TJ Oshie, Phil Kessel, the list goes on. Thomas Vanek, just some great players that had played college hockey in the WCHA. So it was exciting every weekend that you were going against high end, high caliber competition.
So who are some of the guys? I don't want to sit and trail through 8 years of elite prospects to find out, but who were some of the guys that a lot of the fans would have heard of that you would have coached on those Michigan Tech teams?
On the Michigan Tech team, probably the one that people would be most familiar with was John Scott. He
Yeah.
was a defenseman in college hockey, and went on and became a heavyweight in the NHL, and actually a very smart guy. People might have listened to his podcast, Dropping the Gloves, but John was a mechanical engineer, and he wasn't finished his degree after 4 years. He left, and went and played initially with Houston in the American League, which was Minnesota's farm team, and worked his way up to the Minnesota Wild. And I stayed on John, to finish his degree, and worked with him, and he was able to do it in the course of a few summers, and complete the credits that he needed to complete his mechanical engineering degree. But a guy that went on to, it was storybook in the NHL All-Star game, and just a great
Unreal.
guy. Awfully proud of him and what he did, not only on the ice but off the ice, in finishing his degree.
So after the 8 years come to a halt, you end up at Providence College, back down to being an assistant coach. Was that through choice or was that through like the kind of that was what was on the table at the time?
Yeah, it was an opportunity to go to Providence, and work with Nate Lehman and Ben Barr. And a lot of times, when you're an assistant coach, you're doing more coaching, certainly on an
Right.
individual basis. As a guy that had been in college hockey a long time, I wasn't doing a whole lot of the recruiting. Ben Barr was on the road doing a lot of the finding players and evaluating players, and I was responsible for working with the defensemen, and overseeing the penalty kill. So really enjoyed going back to being an assistant coach after being a head coach where you're responsible for everything from overseeing the budget to media responsibilities to staffing. We've got a pretty big staff you're looking at, and you're torn in a lot of different directions that a lot of times don't have anything to do with hockey. Go back to being an assistant coach, and it's pure coaching. You're
Yeah.
working with players, skill development. Before practice, after practice, and we brought some really good players into Providence College. We had a first round pick in Mark Jankowski, and that group of guys with Nola Chari went on and played in the NHL. Brandon
Sick.
Tanev, Kevin Rooney, really good group that went on and won the national championship in 2014, 15, I believe.
Yeah, unreal. 2014-15 sees you go into the program with Elmira Jackals, head coach and director of hockey operations. You spent a couple of seasons there. Talk us through like making the transition into that side of the game.
Yeah, I got hired by the Buffalo Sabres. That was the affiliation. Buffalo was their American League affiliate was Rochester, and then their ECHL affiliate was the Elmira Jackals. The Sabres oversaw the hiring process. They did all the interviewing. I got hired by Joe Batista, who was the VP of hockey operations for the Sabres, and Toby O'Brien, who was in the scouting department for the Sabres. So they brought me on to run the ECHL affiliate, and very different experience from college hockey, where you're in charge of the roster and bringing the players in and negotiating contracts, overseeing trades, managing the player movement between the American League and the ECHL, and totally rebuilt the roster. We kept one guy from the previous year and brought a whole new batch of players in, and set a franchise record for road wins, and kind of turned things around in Elmira.
Franchise record for fucking goalies as well. You had 10 goalies in that first year. What is that? How do you have 10 netminders in one season?
It's a little bit one of the big challenges of the ECHL is your roster management, because it's the ECHL is sometimes is referred to as the ever-changing hockey league, because you have players
Yeah.
that are called up not only at that time. A lot of times now the movement between the ECHL and the American League is just between your affiliate, but where we were located geographically, not only was Rochester fairly close, but Syracuse, New York, Utica, Binghamton, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, they were all right there. So if their affiliate was down in Florida and they needed a player on Friday, then that player would get called. Well, Elmira's right there. They're only, an hour and a bit away. Call a goalie from Elmira up. We need a backup. So it was also Tim Murray was the GM of the Sabres, and he was going through at that time a rebuild where he was looking to go full tank mode to get McDavid or Eichel in the draft. So we ended up trading all of the expiring contracts in the organization for no bodies coming back, but draft picks. So that
Yeah.
meant a lot of the players in Rochester went up to Buffalo. The contracted players and the players that I had signed from Elmira went up and played the American League in Rochester. So, the result is you have 10 goalies on your roster. And it's not uncommon in the ECHL in those days for your roster to have 50 guys come through the doors.
Yeah, looking at it, you're pretty close to 50. I'm looking for names that would be familiar with the EIHL fans. So Travis Fullerton played over here. Justin Sawyer played over here. Ryan Hand, he was a tough cookie, eh?
Yes, yes. As was Justin Sawyer, big boy.
Yeah, yeah, he was a tough boy as well. But yeah, there's probably like four of Brody Reed. He was over here as well. And then I'm just going to go on to your second season. See, Shane Owen, there in your second season. So I hadn't realized that. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about Fife in a little while, but how good is Shane Owen, man?
Well, I traded for Shane. It was probably pretty close to the deadline, And I believe we had a goalie that got called up to Rochester. So I traded with, if I remember correctly, Indy, and brought Shane in, and he was our guy down the stretch. Played really well. Had a good relationship with Shane, and actually wanted to bring him back, but he then elected to make the jump, and the next season he went overseas.
Yeah, never been back since. He's talking about toughness. That second year, you had Garrett Klotz. He's another guy that played over here. He was a big tough boy too, eh?
Interesting story with Klotzy. We were playing Adirondack, and um, just divisional game rivalry, pretty heated. You play your divisional opponents a lot in the ECHL, so we had always had pretty physical games, lots of fights with Adirondack, and we had ended up beating them in a shootout. And if I remember correctly, Case and Holman, I think, scored in the shootout. Went by their bench and had some words for their bench, and both teams kind of spilled onto the ice. And Garrett Klotz ended up fighting their heavyweight at center ice with both teams kind of gathered around the center circle, and it was like it seemed like it could have been a powder keg that was going to explode, and everybody just kind of clapped and went, "Yeah, all right, good fight." Both teams went off the
Good
ice, so
job,
the fans
boys.
saw 60 minutes of hockey, then they saw overtime, then they saw a shootout, then they saw the two heavyweights go at it at center ice with both teams around the center circle, and that was Klotzy.
You'd have been pissed if you left 5 minutes early from that game. I just want to roll back just to your playing career because I missed this, and I only bring it up because my dad played with him as well when he came over here. You played with Keith Gretzky.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yes.
came he came over and played in Air Bruins. My dad said he was fucking honking. Like he didn't get much of Wayno's talent, I don't think.
Keith was a really good guy. He's been in the scouting world for a long time with Boston, with Edmonton now, and Walter, his father, came down to Winston Salem a few times, and then when we would go up north, a lot of times Walter would come to the games. At that time, Erie, Pennsylvania was in the league, not too far from Brantford, Ontario. So Walter would come to the games. So got a chance to meet Walter and shake his hand, and what a great man.
Legend, absolute legend. The next stop of your career, you went to the Raiders. This time you got the GM role to chuck in with the coaching role. How did you find that balancing act between being the GM and coach? Was that much the same as the director of hockey operations in the
Same
previous
thing,
job?
different title. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
exactly the same thing, just called a different name. So
yeah.
whether you call it director of hockey operations or general manager. Sometimes in the minor leagues, a general manager has some of the business responsibilities. So it was for me, it was exactly the same. I had all the hockey decisions in terms of signing players and building the roster. So Worcester was an expansion team. So start from scratch in the ECHL. There's no expansion draft. You have no protected list. You start with nothing and build a roster.
So you're targeting free agents and guys coming out of school and just try to build that roster. How was that for an experience of doing that for the very first time? That must have been pretty challenging.
It was challenging, but it was great. I actually had a year of scouting. So
Oh,
Worcester
nice.
hired me the fall before the puck dropped. So I spent the year on the road watching the ECHL, watching the American League, watching college hockey, watching major junior, going up to Canada, watching U Sport. So I was traveling all over, mostly the eastern part of North America, and watching a lot of hockey players. And then we put a roster together that made the playoffs in year one, and that's tough to do because
It's
29
legit.
teams, 16 of them make the playoffs, 13 are going home playing golf.
Yeah, but so that's a hell of a way to introduce the expansion team into the league. What was it like in terms of trying to get guys to come there and sell them the dream and get them to pick you guys and sign for the Raiders?
We had a really good ownership group. Cliff was a terrific owner, and we had a really nice building. It was an American League building with the DCU Center in
Nice.
Worcester. Had a good fan base there, so we had a good setup in terms of living apartments. So that side of things was easy to sell. Sometimes in the ECHL, geography can be a little bit challenging. Where if depending where you are in your career, it might be attractive to go play down in Florida or Savannah, Georgia, where there's no snow. You're wearing flip flops, pair of shorts, and
Yeah,
a tank top
shorts to the rink, eh?
yeah, so that's a little bit different than winters in Massachusetts. So, but we put a good team together, put a good roster together, had a really good relationship. Part of my responsibility in that first year was to find an affiliation for the NHL American League, and had a really good relationship with the Islanders, and they were very involved. Chris Lamorello oversaw the Bridgeport Islanders, and at that time it was the Sound Tigers. But he was probably in our building every week, watching the contracted players, making sure that their development was going in the right direction. Chris Terreri, Mitch Korn were in charge of the goaltenders. We had usually one contracted goalie, sometimes two. So Chris was up working with the goalies pretty much on a weekly basis. So Bridgeport was fairly close, just over an hour away from Worcester. So there was a really good synergy there, I thought, between developing players in the ECHL, having them go up the ladder to the American League, and then hopefully up one more step to the National Hockey League.
When you're in this GM slash director of hockey operations role, and you do have the affiliates from the coast and from the big club, how much is the big club having a say on, right, we need player X to be here by here. By December, we need this guy to come on 5-10%. So what if you then as coach are not really fancying him because he's been fucking shit for 2 weeks? And the big club like leaning on you to be like, this guy must play, he has to play? Or are they saying, if he's playing shit, you sit him on the bench? How does that work for you?
It's a great question, and it's a big balancing act, to be honest with you, where you're balancing. You're in a sense torn between two masters, because you've got your ownership at the ECHL that they want to win, and they want to win right now,
Yeah, of
and then you've
course,
got
yeah.
your affiliate that they want you to develop players. So they get the analytics that show, okay, this is how much ice time this player has had. Here's what he played on the power play, the penalty kill, which goalie's getting the start. So it's balancing, keeping your affiliate happy and giving ice time to players that need ice time, that maybe they're going to make mistakes, and they're in the development stage, versus we have to win right now. We're playing the best guys that give us the best chance to win every second. So you're walking a tightrope with that, and I know I went through it as a player when I got called up to the American League, and finished the regular season in Binghamton, and was in and out of the lineup, and not always dressing every night, and then got sent back down to the ECHL for the playoffs. And I sat down with the coach and said, "Hey, just thank you very much for the opportunity. I loved it here. As a player, what do I have to do to be an everyday player in the American League?" And he said, "Well, Jamie, you're better than some of the defensemen that we have here, but they have a contract and you don't. So they have to play and you're not." And to be honest,
Simple.
that took me about a year to wrap my head around. Like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, like I give you a better chance to win. You're saying I'm better than some of the guys you have signed, but they have a contract and I don't, and I'm gone. That, as a player, is one of the hardest things to balance in when you're in the minors. First round picks get crack after crack after crack after
Yeah.
crack. So it is definitely, as a GM, having that balance, and I've always found being honest with players and upfront with players is the best way to handle all of those situations.
The next 4 years is spent with elite juniors. You're with under 15s and under 18s AAA, so very, very good standard. It's something I was really passionate about growing up, was coaching the kids and coaching the good kids, being around coaching the select teams. I think it's probably one of the most rewarding things that you can do. What was the reasoning for leaving the pro game behind and going down and coaching some of these like talented studs that are playing U15, U18?
Yeah, it was definitely different for me. I'd done a long time in the NCAA. I'd done 6 years of pro hockey. So there was a couple of factors involved in that. One, it was COVID, and
Of course.
in
Yeah.
North America, a lot of things were shut down. The other aspect was I have three sons. My wife and I had moved around a lot with coaching. The boys had been this high school, that high school, this middle school, and during COVID, some of the learning in schools in North America was online versus in person. So I had an opportunity to go to a private prep school in Connecticut where everything was in-person teaching, pretty
Oh,
rural,
perfect.
pretty remote, so pretty safe in terms of what was happening with COVID. So I got our younger two sons through high school at South Kent, and then had an opportunity to work with a different level of athlete. It was really different for me. I distinctly remember my first week at South Kent. I'd come from the pro game where I had a terrific captain, Mike Cornell. I think at the time he was 32 years old and had a couple of kids. And Corny and I would meet every week and talk about the team and the direction and a little bit with him and his future and where he was going to go. He's now a scout with Detroit Red Wings, but
Awesome.
I went from having the conversations with a 32-year-old Mike Cornell to my first week at South Kent, and I've got a 15-year-old in my office who's bawling his eyes out because he's homesick. And it was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a whole different set of circumstances in helping players. But I loved it. It was really different because of the where kids and athletes were in their stage of their game and development. And we had some really high end guys. We had the first overall pick in the USHL draft. We had two
Wow.
top 10 picks. We had some high Quebec Major Junior draft picks. Jacob Fowler was our goaltender who,
Just about to bring him up.
yeah, so we had some really high end players. So it was different. It's still recruiting. You were recruiting families and much younger kids, but kind of helping them navigate the process as they go from South Kent into junior hockey to the NCAA. So, we had kids that were being recruited for the NCAA, but they haven't even played junior hockey yet. So it was kind of helping them and their families navigate what the college process of recruiting looked like. And, I'd sat the other side of the desk as a recruiter. So I think I had some pretty good insight to help some of those families through that.
So at that level, are these kids on scholarships? Are they paying? What are they paying to be there? Like, how does it work within that program? And
Yeah.
as a bit of a follow up, so for the UK hockey fans, a lot of a lot of people like myself have a pretty good idea of like midget AAA, Bantam AAA, and stuff like that. The good schools. What kind of schools are you competing against? So like, what sort of money are they spending, and then what programs are you competing against?
Yeah. Great question. So South Kent was a private prep school, and it was need-based financial aid. So at the time, it was about $70,000 US per year to go to school and play hockey at South Kent. So families would submit their tax returns. We had some families that paid the full shot. We had other families, we recruited all over the world. We had kids from Finland, Slovakia, California in the United States, Western Canada, Quebec, all over the place. So some kids would pay $2,000-3,000 to go to school, and the
Oh
rest of
wow.
it was covered with financial aid. So we had a net revenue that we had to hit. Basically, it's an average. So we had to balance it out. We couldn't just give every kid, $65,000 in aid to come to school. So there was a business side of it for that. So it was a little bit of navigating that part of it on the financial side, and then I really changed the whole process when I got there. South Kent was heavily involved with USA Hockey and U18, going to regionals and nationals. Honestly, I wasn't a big fan of that. I didn't like the
Okay.
schedule that you had to play. There was teams that we had to play within our region to qualify for the regionals, and some of those games were 10-2, and it didn't make sense for us to be playing those teams. So we actually started a new league, the Prep Hockey Conference, and that was
Okay.
Shattuck St. Mary's, South Kent, Northwood Academy, Mount St. Charles, Culver Academy, St. Andrews out of just north of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So a phenomenal league, high end prep schools that were all of it was remote learning. Like when our kids went to South Kent, give you an idea of what their schedule looked like. They lived on campus in the dorms, eating at the dining hall. Games were typically Saturday, Sunday. Some tournaments or showcases we would play Friday, but practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Players would have skills sessions, 2 45-minute skills sessions, in addition to their 75-minute team practices, and then the games on the weekend. And then we had a strength coach. They were in the weight room twice a week. So it was pretty in-depth training. You're going 6 days a week with practices, skills sessions, weight room, games. It was very similar to a college schedule.
Did you have any rules in place on like the boys having girlfriends and being if bringing girls
It's an
in and around
all-boys school, so
campus?
that really wasn't an issue.
Oh, that that nails that down then, doesn't it? Because that's some babysitting shit that you don't want to have to be taking care of a bunch of horny 15, 16, 17-year-old lads who don't know where to keep it. That's a headache you don't need when you're trying to coach and run a program and make sure the money lines up. How did you find that side of it? Like, is it much the same as just dealing with a pro budget? Like, you just got to balance the checkbook, so to speak.
Yeah, it was certainly that's a lot of money when you're asking families to make that commitment. There's a lot to that, but I think what we were offering was pretty special in terms of the schedule, the training, the preparation. You've got somebody overseeing the program. Like, the goal of those families was, they want their son to play high level junior hockey, and then they want to play Division 1 NCAA hockey. Well, in terms of when I'm sitting on the phone and talking to that family about coming to South Kent, you want to go to the NCAA. I coached at that level for 20 years, so I can help you navigate and help your son develop. The talent and the hard work has to come from your son, but in terms of how that process, what it takes to be a Division 1 athlete and play at the highest level of the NCAA, I really felt I was providing a lot for those families and paving the way and helping their sons through that.
We all know that coaching under 18s and below, the one major issue you have with that is parents. What was the kind of worst part of having the kids? Was there any bad parent interactions? Anyone wondering why little Johnny's not on fucking PP1 at the weekends? You get a lot of that or no?
Yeah, you certainly, I think today's, and part of it, understandably, comes from if I'm stroking a check for a pretty hefty
Yeah.
amount of money, I have some pretty high expectations. I'm incredibly blunt, black and white, in terms of, you know, I'm never guaranteeing anybody any ice time. I guarantee they'll get an opportunity. And then with that opportunity, how do they earn their ice time? But, when you're talking about a 15-year-old, my wife and I are parents to 3 boys, you're definitely concerned with their welfare. And I think you really have to communicate with the parents. That said, I'm really clear with the parents in those situations and the players that we're trying to prepare you for junior hockey and college hockey. If you think as a parent you're going to call your NCAA coach and say Johnny's not on the power play, I don't understand why, that's not going to work. So
No.
you have to teach them, okay, you need to be a big boy here, and you need to come into the office and there's a right time and a right place. How can I get more ice time? As a coach, I have zero problem with a player asking that.
No,
Be prepared.
it's
You
good.
might not like the answer you get, but we're going to be on the same page, and you're going to understand this is what I need to do as a player to get more ice time. These are the things specific that you need to do as a player in order to get more opportunity and expand your role. Currently, these are the things you're not doing. So, I don't have a problem telling a parent, well, send your son in to see me and I'll talk with what's going on with him. And I have no problem following up with a parent saying, here's how our conversation went. So you have to communicate with the parents. Again, they're spending a lot of money for their son to be at that institution, and the expectations are high.
Just that last year there, you then move over to Europe. You go to Slovan, which is in Slovakia. Was that part of the way through that last season there, or?
Yeah. So I had left South Kent in September. My mom, who has passed away, was sick, and so I went out to British Columbia and helped out with her in the fall, and I hadn't done that with my father, and regretted that. And so my mom was doing much better health wise, and then in January, I had actually reached out to Miroslav Shatan, who's the president of the Slovakian Ice Hockey Federation, and we had actually had a pretty good pipeline of players from Slovakia coming to South Kent. And I'd gotten to know Miroslav a little bit. I'd reached out to him and said, hey, internationally, I'm kind of in a weird spot because I'm Canadian, and Hockey Canada doesn't really want a whole lot to do with Jamie Russell because he spent 20 years in the NCAA. USA Hockey doesn't have a whole lot of interest in Jamie Russell because I'm Canadian. So internationally, I'd like to be involved, and I said, hey, I'd love to do something, World Juniors, Spengler Cup, World Championships, whatever you need, I'd be interested in that. And he said, well, I don't really have anything right now, but with your resume, have you ever thought about coaching overseas? And there's a team in Slovakia that I know, would have interest. A week and a half later, I was in Slovakia, and the team was out of the playoff picture at that time. We went 7-3-2 down the stretch, got into the playoffs, and won the first round of the playoffs. So really enjoyed my time in the extra league in Slovakia. It was very good hockey.
So, as part of this podcast, I do a segment called Road Tripping, and Road Tripping basically takes me to games across Europe. In the last couple of years, games in Berlin, in Cologne, in Košice, in Bratislava, in Gothenburg, pretty much fucking anywhere you can think of. But I've probably caught 3 or 4 games in the last 3 years over in Bratislava, and fucking love the Slovak league. Like they finish every hit, it's quick. You've got like 4 lines of guys, they can all skate, they're all fast. How did you find the standard when you were there?
I thought the hockey was outstanding. I was really impressed. I didn't really know what to expect when I got there. 7 imports in the extra liga in Slovakia, and then your Slovak players are high end.
Money.
So very good quality of hockey. I was impressed.
Also, like just from my experience, the Slovak people are cool. Like the food's good. It's just, yeah, it was just a good spot. How did you find like adapting to the language barrier? Because unlike any coaching role you've ever had previously, you now have a language barrier in between yourself as the head coach and well, a good majority of the players.
Really different. The language aspect of things. When the first meeting I had with the team, it was I'm talking, and I keep hearing talking, and I'm like, this is incredibly disrespectful. Like, who the hell's talking while I'm talking to the team?
Translating?
They're translating. And then, the penny dropped, and I was like, oh, okay, they're translating. So about half the team of the Slovaks, their English was just okay. So every meeting we had was translated the pregame scouting report where the assistant coach is talking about our upcoming opponent and going through everything. That's all in Slovak. So then one of the players that speaks good English is with the imports, and he's translating that. And then when I'm speaking, doing video for post game where these are the things that we did well, these are the teaching points that we have to improve. Here's some highlights as I'm speaking. There's a Slovak who's translating to the Slovaks from English. So that was very different. Last year in the Alps League, everybody's English was fantastic. It was
Yeah.
no issue.
So obviously you go through part of the way you said January, you go over to Slovakia, you finish season off, you go into the playoffs. Obviously, this isn't your team. You haven't recruited this team. Did you bring any guys in from January towards the end of the year, or did you just ride out with what you had?
No, we did, and in Zvolen, I didn't have a huge say in the roster. Obviously, I went to January. The team was the team. We did bring in Jared Lukasevich, who had played college hockey. I was familiar with him. He played at Denver. So then I had a lot of conversations with Jared. I had a lot of conversations with the agent. Interestingly enough, his agent I had played college hockey with in Michigan Tech. So
Okay, there you go.
I knew the agency very well, had a great relationship with Jay Luknowski and his partner, Mark. And we brought Jared in, and he did really well. And played great for us down the stretch.
So looking at the end of that season, you've had a pretty good run there. You got from being out of contention to winning a playoff round. Did you know at the end of that season that you wanted to go back to Europe?
They had offered me a contract to go back. I love the hockey in Slovakia in the Extraliga. I do find across the league, the ownership management is very, very Eastern European. And, some of the things I wasn't a big fan of, threatening to fire players if they have a bad weekend. And that's very common in Slovakia. I wasn't a big fan of some of those things. So had an opportunity to go to the Alps League. Dan Tuden was the general manager from Ottawa. Had a great relationship with Dan, still talk to him fairly frequently. And just a beautiful place in the world to live. And assistant coach with McGregor Sharp, who is from Red Deer, and just had a fantastic experience in the Alps League.
So just looking through the roster in the Alps League there, one Canadian goalie, then you've got a Swede, a Finn, a Danish lad on D, and then a Canadian forward and a German Italian. So it looks like you got a couple of dual nats, and then was it four imports?
It's four imports, but then you have what they call Italos, an Italian Canadian or an Italian American that has an Italian passport. It's a North American player that doesn't count as an import. So we had Diego Cuglietta, who we recruited, who's from Kamloops. So I had a great connection with Diego, and he had a fantastic year. Unfortunately, we lost him in the playoffs. We won a round, we advanced, and heading into the semifinals, he was our first line center without Diego. But
Ouch.
four imports, and then your Italos don't count as an import.
So you had a big success there, though. You won the Italian Super Cup. How was that getting your hands on some silverware?
Yeah, it was. The schedule is a little bit different in how they do things. We won the Italian Super Cup, and then they have what they call this a preliminary stage, where, if I remember off the top of my head, that's 40 something games. And then I think there was 13 teams last year. The top five go to what's called the master round, and then 6 through 13 they play each other to get it down to the last three spots for the playoffs. So the last part of your season, we were in the top five, so we're just playing the top five teams. And then 8 teams make the playoffs, and then it's best of seven, best of seven, best of seven, through there. So it's a different way to do it. And then mixed in there, we had the Continental Cup because We were representing Italy in the Continental Cup. We won the first stage, advanced to the next stage, went to Slovakia, and we played Kazakhstan, Slovakia, and Cardiff. And
Yeah.
what that does is that schedule is not set because you don't know who's going to advance. So when we won the first stage and went to the next stage, it was a week we had to go to Slovakia. We had games in the league that were scheduled. So we had to take those three games, move them. So our schedule became really, really challenging because everybody's playing two games a week. And we, to make up for the Continental Cup games, we were playing 3 and 4 with travel. So I think Cardiff ran into exactly the same thing because they had league games
Yep.
scheduled. Now you gotta take those and move them, and it becomes a lot.
Both the clubs that did well in Europe. So Sheffield Steelers had a really good run in the Champions League last year. They get in to play Berlin. When they come on the back of that, they have the hangover. And then Cardiff win the Continental Cup at home. I don't think they fucking lost seven straight after the Continental Cup, right? It was a tough stretch of games, and obviously at this stage of the season, the Continental Cup was January, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Cardiff had so many man games lost through injury already last year, and then it's like, hey, here's a competition for some silverware right in the middle of January, and then you lose two guys there, and all of a sudden you're like, there's seven guys down on your roster, and we've got to find three extra nights that we can chuck in three more games, and it's just yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, in Slovakia at the Continental Cup, you play three games in 3 days. Cardiff lost both their goalies, and they
Yeah,
had to
that's right.
fly a
Yeah,
guy in. They lost both
they
their goalies in back-to-back games, and it's
flew some
now
young
you.
Ukrainian kid in, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry.
I said, I think they flew in some young Ukrainian kid. He was like 22, 23 or something like that.
Yes, he was very young, and he played their third game because in back-to-back games they lost both their goalies,
It's
and
crazy.
now you're going back to league play, and you've got the travel, you've got a condensed schedule, and now you've amassed these injuries in the Continental Cup, so it becomes a lot. But I was incredibly impressed with Cardiff. I'm watching the games and preparing for them when we played them, and 15 imports. I thought the roster was outstanding. I thought how they played. So that was a little bit what attracted me to the UK.
Just real fast, ladies and gents, if you've never seen Ritan's logo, how fucking cool is that? How cool is that logo? I love that. That looked badass on a jersey. What color were the unis in Ritan?
They were blue and red. Yeah,
Oh, see, that would look good on a black
yeah.
and gray back
Similar
piece.
to Montreal Canadian style, but
Yeah.
blue was the base color for the color
That's a
lines.
cool logo. So you just said there, touching on playing against Cardiff, it's part of the reason that you wanted to come to the UK. What else had you heard about UK? Obviously, I've seen from like the guys you've coached in the coast, you would have recognized a lot of names that from your East Coast days and probably from your collegiate days that have come over and tested the waters and been back and forth. What else kind of triggered other than the Cardiff experience?
Yeah, family wise, my background, both sides of my family are from Scotland. My father was born and raised in Elgin. My mother's side of the family
Oh, really?
is from Maybole, Girvan. So I'd been to Scotland just before I went to Michigan Tech, actually. There was definitely a family connection there. And then, hockey wise, very impressed, as I said, with Cardiff and what I saw at the Continental Cup. And then you're when you're coaching in Europe, you're looking at other leagues and other scores, and you saw how Sheffield did in the Champions League, and it's like, geez, that's impressive. They got to the knockout stage, and they're beating big time teams, and for me that was very attractive.
So the conversations between yourself and Fife, how early on did that start in the summer? Because I know they were undergoing a change in ownership. There was debate whether they were going to go National League or whether they were going to stay in the Elite League. It seemed like it was no news was kind of coming out, and then the fans are going like, "What the fuck are we? Are we coming? Are we going? Are we staying? Like, if we are, who's coming in?" And then all of a sudden, they announced yourself. But for you, behind the scenes, how early was this going on?
Um, to be honest, I can't remember the date, but Max and I had a number of conversations, and really there was an instant connection. I'm very comfortable with Max. I got a ton of respect for him and his hockey background, and I
He's a
think
big time beauty.
we shared a really common vision of how we were going to build a roster, and then it was a little bit of hurry up and wait because we kind of agreed to things, but then the sale of the team was not finalized. So there was a lot of hoops that had to be jumped through in order to get the sale and everything in place finalized. And then we were really under the gun in terms of a time crunch. We basically started with nothing for our roster. Like we brought Shane back and Jonas Emmerdahl, and then it was everything else was brand new. So, a lot of teams were probably half to three quarters done with their roster when we started. So it was a ton of phone calls to players, to agents, watching a lot of video, uh, doing a lot of background and research on character of players and kind of what we wanted to establish with culture early on. So it was a busy summer to say the least.
So that was actually going to be one of my questions. You've kind of already answered it there without me asking it. But how much? Because sometimes when you see in the UK, you have GMs and then you have head coaches, but actually it's very much a joint effort when it comes to recruitment and when it comes to bringing guys in. But on the other hand, sometimes you have a GM who signs a team and just hires a coach to coach the team. But it sounds to me like you played like quite a big part in getting guys over the line.
Yeah, I think Max and I have a great partnership and just how the dynamics work. We discuss everything in terms of players that we're looking at. As I said, very common vision on what we wanted to build. I was really upfront with Max in terms of the British players said, like, I have no idea on that player pool. I'm not going to be a whole lot of value. I don't know the player pool with the UK players and the British players. If they've played in North America, I can certainly make some calls. There'll be somebody I know. The hockey world's incredibly small. Usually within 5 minutes, I can find somebody in common that has coached with somebody or played with somebody or knows them. So I really had no input for the British players that we added to the roster. But Max and I would kind of look at the hockey side of things, and then if there was somebody that we targeted and we wanted to go after, then Max would run with it in terms of negotiating the contract and taking care of the financial side of things, and then there's all the other aspects. You've got to figure out apartments and vehicles and all of that, work visas, and there's a lot to it, and getting everything done and putting the roster together was a ton of work. But Max and I had a really good process of how to go about it.
This is it's one thing that anyone that knows the UK hockey game will know why Fife Flyers have struggled in years gone by is the ability to tr attract that top end Brit. It's been a very long time since. And don't get me wrong, when I was growing up, it was back in the British National League then, where it was kind of eight imports, eight Brits. It was kind of 50-50, nine imports, nine Brits, whatever it was. And Fife always had the best Brits. They always had the really, really good guys. They were always up there competing at the top of the league. But kind of since going into the Elite League, you would probably struggle to think back to a Robert Dowd, a Ben Bounds, a real probably Stephen Murphy, the goaltender, is probably the last real elite British player that they've had. Obviously, you guys starting late, and like you say, most of the teams are three quarters filled by the time you're done, but their fucking Brits are all 100% done. And probably in September the year before. Like, if you got Robert Dowd on your roster, you're not risking letting him go. If you got Ben Bounds in there, you're not risking letting him go. What's gonna obviously? Are you on a 1 year? Or are you on a 2 year? What have you signed there for yourself?
Yeah, we're 1 year at a time. I've
Okay.
loved things so far, but I think both sides. I'm new to this league and new ownership. let's see how everything goes. But definitely, obviously we want to be successful right now. But that said, kind of where we were and how we were going to build this, it's going to take some time. It's going to be a
Yeah.
process, and there's steps involved. And we absolutely made a commitment that we want to have, excuse me, British players and work with them, give them opportunity and develop them. And we've absolutely done that. I think we've got a lot of young players that are getting significant minutes and playing in a lot of different situations. That's been exasperated a little bit because of all the injuries that we've had, but
Yeah.
that's a positive for them that they're getting an opportunity to play and getting into the EIHL and figure out, okay, what's this league about for a very young player with British training.
The kind of second follow-up bit to that question, why I asked if you're a 1 or a 2 year, and I imagine Maxi's doing this already, but starting to look at Brits for next year already and starting to, put the radar out there, whether it be you, looking at attracting, like perhaps a GB international that could come in and help shore things up there. Perhaps it's the next young stud that's like you say is going to get an opportunity. It looks like my boy Mason's had a good start to the year there, quite a few man of the match
Fantastic.
awards. Just a great kid, big time beauty, good in the room, funny bastard, got talent for days. And then you got Brody Kay there. He, he obviously did something to trigger Cardiff's radar. It didn't work out down there for him, but the Cardiff's loss is Fife's gain, and then I saw at the weekend just gone. You brought up my boy Keegan Cairns there, big old tough guy. It was good to see Keegan get a run out there and up in Manchester. Obviously doing great things with Braveheart Promotions in the MMA. He had a title fight, didn't go his way the weekend, but all the best Keegs get back in there and start keep chucking them nuts. Hopefully we see a strap around your waist pretty soon. But like it's what have you made of the standard of the Elite League so far? I know you haven't got to see everybody yet because we've had the Challenge Cup front load the season, but what have you made of the standard of the play and of the British players and just the league in general?
I love the league. I think the quality of play is outstanding. I think it's very high level. I've been really impressed with the EIHL so far. As you said, we haven't played everybody. I think we played Belfast 6 times. It's the nature of the Challenge Cup. We played Dundee a ton of times. We played Glasgow. We played Belfast, but there's probably more teams that we haven't played once yet. So um, it's very exciting to be able to play some new opponents here coming up. We're pretty much done with the Challenge Cup. We've got one game left in that, but to answer your question, I think the league's been fantastic.
Yeah, the progress of the league, it was doing really well, and then COVID kind of put a spanner in the works. And then we had that Elite series where it was kind of played behind closed door, and they called it like the streaming series during COVID there. But now I think we're 2 or 3 years removed from that. We're starting to see that level just go back up again. The level of the guys that the teams are recruiting is also gone back up, and ultimately it makes the on ice product so much better for the fans.
Yeah, being new to the league, I would like to see the schedule tweaked. I think there's some ways that you can um, make a better product out there. Like when we go to Belfast, if we play Belfast on the road and then play it at home the next night, we get back at 5 o'clock in the morning. And
It's a
then we turn
joke.
around and we play Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock. And, just my experience in Slovakia, the games were all Friday, Sunday. You played one game at home, one game on the road. The travel was not outrageous. You don't need to spend money and stay in a hotel and meals and all those kinds of things. But you don't play back to back where you get back late at night and then have to turn around. I think it puts players at risk somewhat with injury when you're combining that kind of travel with back to back games. Like I'd love to go to Belfast and play 2 games. Like why don't we play
Yeah.
go all that way, play Saturday, play Sunday, come back. When they come here, they could play Dundee, they could play Fife, So, um, trying to learn and understand the league, I think the league is outstanding. I think there's ways to make it better and make the schedule a little bit more manageable in terms of putting a better product on the ice.
I'm glad you said that because since starting road tripping, I've been banging the fucking drum about Friday, Sunday, Friday, Sunday. So last year, every Elite League player or GM or coach, whoever I had on, that was the question of the year last year. If you had a choice between Friday, Sunday and Saturday, Sunday, what would you rather? Not one single player, not one said Saturday, Sunday. Every single one said Friday, Sunday. What I have noticed so far this year is there have been more Friday games. There have been more kind of Friday, Sunday split, or that Friday, Saturday where you're kind of back to back, like you say, Belfast can be in Fife and then it can be in Dundee, or they could be in Fife, it can be in Glasgow, wherever it be. It's it's better for the players' welfare. You're going to see a better product. It's ice hockey is a crazy fast physical sport. Having 6 hours on a bus and then 3 hours in your bed is not prime for giving a great on ice product. Guess what? You give those guys 24 hours to recover and get some food in, go ride the bike, go go play 9 holes of golf, stretch the legs out, whatever it is in between on that Saturday. That product on the Sunday is going to be so much better. And a big part of the reason we're talking about it so much last year, Cardiff ultimately had the best roster come like September last year. Cardiff's roster was probably nailed on to be there in the league and the playoffs, wherever else. The amount of games they were missing through injury, and how much of a factor is the back to back in all of these guys getting injured? It's probably quite a huge factor. I know from when I played, you generally got hurt on that second game. Like that second game and two, if you had a little knock on the Saturday, you play through it, but then by the end of Sunday, you can't fucking move. And the shoulders hanging off or the wrists in bits. Just having those 24, 36 hours between face-offs is going to massively make the product better.
Yeah, like Saturday night certainly is a big draw. You've got some fantastic buildings with Nottingham and Sheffield and Belfast, and so Saturday night is a draw, and I absolutely understand that. I don't think you have to go completely away from everything's got to be Friday, Sunday. Like I'm fine playing Saturday, Sunday. If we go to Belfast and play Belfast Saturday, stay there and play Sunday and come back. Maybe we don't
Perfect.
have a home game that weekend. The next weekend we play two at home. Somebody
Yeah.
comes here and then maybe they play us and they play Dundee, which is easy travel. Or when we
Like
go
Cardiff
south,
coming all that way, like they
yeah,
could
if
easily
we
do
go
that.
all the way down south, let's play two games. Let's play,
Cardiff,
Saturday
Guildford.
against somebody, Sunday against somebody. If there is a situation where you have, you go all the way down to Cardiff and play, and you're going to play back at home, that, in my opinion, should be Friday, Sunday. So you have
Yeah.
that day off in between. I don't think it's massive changes. I think it's tweaking it and making it more manageable, and I think you get a better product. I think you're going to have less injuries, which is a huge cost for owners when you have to bring players in
Yeah.
because you've got guys that are injured. That's a huge cost compared to hotel and some meals. So I love the league. I think it's got boundless potential. Been very impressed here so far.
One of the major things that I found as a talking point, obviously, I'm from the UK. We're a fucking football country. 90% of the games that play in football play on a Saturday. Like everybody's got a football team, whether that be Scotland, whether it be England, or whether it be over in Wales, like so everybody's got a footy team, and most games at football happen on a Saturday. So straight away, like if you're a diehard Chelsea fan, for example, but you just like ice hockey, you're gonna pick Chelsea. If that game's on a Friday night, you're like, fuck, I'm gonna go check out my hockey team on a Friday, and I'm still gonna be at Chelsea on the Saturday, and you've not had to make that choice. I think it's a no-brainer in terms of like stop trying to compete against the sport that's always going to win in our country.
It's no different than the United States. I'm Canadian, but I lived in the United States for a long time. American football is king in the
Yeah.
US, especially if you go down to the South.
Oh yeah.
So Friday night is high school football. Saturday is college football. Sunday is NFL. So, in the ECHL, they would backload the schedule. So you played fewer games in September, October, November, and you played more games December, January, February, March, because you don't want to schedule up against football because you're not going to win that, because there's a finite number of opportunities for people to spend their entertainment dollars, and schedule games where you're going to be successful in getting the best crowds.
Let's look at the rosters for this year. So obviously, like you say, you've got one Challenge Cup game. You boys are done in that. You've got the Giants leading the way. The Panthers are now going to face off against the Stars in a play-in. So in terms of individual kind of performances, something I looked at before we came on air is like point production in both the cup and in the league. I think point production wise in the league there. Let me see if I can find it. I've got it here somewhere. Yeah, you had a couple of guys, 13 points, 11 points, 5 goals, guys picking up 3 and 4 goals, 3 and 4 goals, but then transferring across to that league where it's 6 games, you don't have one guy who scored more than 1 goal in the league, only seven goals scored. What have you found the difference between being in that you're averaging like 2.5 goals a game in the cup versus like 1.1 in the league? And is there any particular reason for that? Is it just the way the schedules fall? Is it injuries? Like, what's been the difference?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that it's no secret that we're challenged to score goals. I think there's a number of reasons. Injuries is part of it, but injuries and schedules, you can keep going on and on about that. Like at the end of the day, those become excuses. So you have to find a way to be successful. In terms of building a roster, it doesn't matter what league you're looking at. It doesn't matter what level of play you're looking at. The players that are in the highest demand are the ones that produce offensively. And that's
Yeah.
also the players that cost the most money. So
Yeah.
when you're building a roster, they don't grow on trees. And, we have a budget. I think the ownership has been fantastic in terms of, okay, this is where we're at. And, I certainly think we're in a position where we can put a competitive roster together. But the guys, we've lost some players it's been unfortunate. The guys that we've had hurt are, we played significant number of games with both our first line wingers out of the lineup. Those are guys that are offensive producers. So, have we looked at bringing people in, and we just brought in Gio Finoro, who played last weekend. I thought he was fantastic. He's an offensive player. He skates well. He's good on faceoffs. He's responsible, has a good motor. But, can you just go to the goal scoring tree and grab a guy in end of October and, that fits our budget? That's challenging to find that. So, we're going to have to score by committee. I think we've got to be stronger defensively. But we're finding our way here week by week.
That's it. Like goal scoring is one of the hardest bits of the game. Finding those guys within budget is also extremely difficult. How do you find, because ultimately the elite league and a lot of the leagues across Europe, they're not a level playing field. You've got teams that have got 9,000 fans versus teams that have got 2,000 fans. The budgets are just astronomically different. How have you find, try to sign players perhaps when they go, well, Sheffield offered me this. And you go, well, good for fucking Sheffield because they've got 4.5 times as many fans as we've got. Have you found like any players with a little bit of a skewed reality and what they're expecting? And I guess if you don't know Fife and if you don't know the league and you don't really know the budgets and stuff, if you hear, your buddy played over here last year and he was getting paid X, you're like, well, shit, I'm gonna ask for that, and then you go, that's not gonna work down here, bud. We got a much tighter budget constraint than some of the teams at the top of the league.
There's a couple things that go into answering that question. Is over the course of the summer, there were guys that I love this player, did research, heard great things. That I know this guy coached him. Here's where he's at. We reach out to the agent and we offer him, and You know, he ends up signing in Sheffield. For this guy, he ends up signing in Nottingham. This guy, well, he signed in Belfast. So, certainly identifying players and recruiting them and getting them signed is two different things. Um, as you're going, we also battled last year. Like it was a tough year last year for Fife. So the first thing any player ever, any agent does when you reach out and say, "Hey, I'm calling about this player," I'm with the Fife Flyers, and they go and they do the research and they look at last year and go, "Yeah, that was a train wreck," and
Yeah,
then they
five
don't
wins.
return the
Yeah.
phone call. So, it's a little bit of the process when you're rebuilding something, when you're starting fresh. One of the things that we talked about was we have an opportunity with a blank page, with a fresh start. Let's do things the right way. Let's make sure we treat players professionally. Let's make sure we do the right things, and as we navigate through, we're building a reputation on, hey, Fife is a really good place to play. This is what they are. This is what they aren't. If you want a state of the art facility that's brand new, we don't have that in Fife. Does that
No.
mean we can't sign great players and put a great product on the ice and be a team that's hard to play against? All of that is part of rebuilding and rebranding and starting new.
I mean, Five Flyers have been around for absolutely ever, and it'd be great to see them in a place where they're competitive and they're putting some wins together and they're challenging for those playoff spots. I think if you look at your results here, you touched on there, just scoring goals seems to be the issue so far. 6-1 against Manchester, 7-2 against Guildford, 4-0 against Fife. You are Fife against Nottingham. Some tight games with Belfast, 3-1, 5-2, and then a loss against the Blaze 4-1. So it's not like you guys are getting blown out the water. It's not like you're getting absolutely smoked. You're not far away, but you are ultimately going to have to find a way. I mean, Shane Owen's fucking about as good as they come in net. But the current goal rate means you're going to have a shutout pretty much every night in order to win a game. And we know in the Elite League they're few and far between. It's a very difficult league to get a shutout. But looking at your next kind of stretch of games here, you kind of you get to play some teams you haven't seen so much. So you've got Manchester, Sheffield, Panthers, Coventry, Sheffield, Cardiff, Glasgow, and Manchester in the next kind of 8 games. Is I play for coaches and everyone's different. Are you very much like let's look at the next game, or you? I played for some coaches and I kind of like this, where we block the season out into blocks. 5 games here, 5 games there, and we need 7 points from that. We need 6 points from that. We need four. We need eight. We need to be winning 10 points out of those 10 available. How do you like to break your season down as a coach?
Yeah, certainly you want to have segments that you're looking at, but our approach is we want to get better every single week and take steps in our development. And we've been challenged that, as you said, we don't score a lot of goals, so that really puts the pressure on. You have to almost make mistake-free hockey.
Yeah.
Excuse me. If you're not scoring a ton of goals, then it forces you to try and win a game 2-1, 3-2. Getting to three has been challenging for us. So, when we've played with a short bench and a lot of young players that are learning and going through understanding what it takes to be successful at this level in this league, there's going to be mistakes. And when you can't score goals that are going to cover up those mistakes, then, a lot of times we've been right there where we play 40 really good minutes and then we have some breakdowns in the third period and the game gets away from us. And that's happened on a number of occasions. And it's understanding, okay, we have to be consistent in what we're doing in our approach and be solid defensively, and we can't have those major breakdowns that result in goals being in the back of the net because we can't outscore our mistakes.
Obviously, you've coached quite a wide variety. I would probably say more than most coaches that I've interviewed. You've been down in the selects, you've been through college, you've been through pro, you've been into Europe. So you've kind of been from like 14 So like we talked about the divorced dad of three, like you've kind of you've been on that full spectrum. How do you get the guys to still have fun coming to the rink when you're on that losing skid? Because hey, I've played for teams where we've gone 6, 7, 9 games. Just coming to the rink is fucking brutal. Like the thought of it. But there's always that one guy in the locker room. There's always someone that, G's everybody up. They might have table tennis on the go, might be cards on the road. How is it that you get the guys to still have fun coming to the rink and want to turn up and put that work in and turn the ship around?
It's a great question. We have a fantastic group. I one of the best groups that I've been around in terms of the character and the personalities in the room. And nobody likes to lose. Like it eats you up. It sucks. It's not fun. But we've got a resilient group that understands. Okay, this is how we have to respond to adversity. And I didn't think last weekend we played a real good game against Glasgow. I thought we bounced back, and we didn't get the result we wanted, but I thought our effort, our work ethic, our compete level, under difficult circumstances where we have lost a few games in a row, is that can be hard to do. Part of it comes back to leadership. We've got an unbelievable leader in Garrett Hunt. He's a guy that plays so hard, but that's such a small part of what he brings to the table and what he does. That, like, he's probably been one of our best penalty killers. He understands veteran hockey, how to make the right play at the right time. But what he does off the ice, in the room, in the community, in the gym, being a good pro, talking with the younger players, holding people accountable. That's a big part of what people don't see about leadership. They see the on ice part, and that's all they see. Being a leader is so much more to that, and Garrett's one of the best I've been around.
Um, Obviously, I used to like dropping the gloves when I played. It was a big part of my role. Can't lie, I was fucking super excited when you signed Hunty. I saw you boys sign him. I was like, let's go. Happy that like it might even be. He's in the top of the top of the range there. He might be even be number one of all time East Coast penalty minutes. There's a guy that is not the tallest, not the biggest, but is probably one of the bravest dudes. He took on all comers down in the jungle in the East Coast. And you hear from guys that played with him, and touching just on what you said, just that glue guy. Like, great on the kill, great in the room, great in the community. Like, you wish you had five of them kind of guys on your roster every year.
Yeah, he's in unbelievable shape. It's when we were kind of going through the process and talking to him on the phone, and doing research on things. Like, he's not 21 years old anymore, and but he's probably the best conditioned athlete on our team, and it's unbelievable how good a shape he's in. And he's a great person. Plays with courage, plays with heart. You can't say enough about the leadership of Garrett. And as a coach, definitely try and make it fun coming to the rink. And fortunately, we've got a really good group of guys that they like being around each other. We don't have any cliques. I don't care where somebody is from, whether they're from Slovenia or Finland or North America or the UK. Like, I don't care, and our team doesn't care. We have a really close knit team that we all are in this together, and we want to get this going in the right direction together.
Couple of final questions from me. Both on a personal and on a team front, what constitutes a successful season?
We want to be a team that's hard to play against. We want to get better every single week. We have internally, we have high expectations. We're not where we want to be right now. And we want to really establish a reputation that this is a very good place to play. We want to have a team at the end of the year that the fans are very proud to say they support. We got a ways to go in some areas, and I'm really confident that we're going to get there.
Well, one of the other UK podcasts, Banners on the Wall, he talked about both Basingstoke, that's my hometown club. They just coming back into the league after a 2.5 year hiatus. And Fife obviously was one of the other teams that he talked about. And this year's almost a mulligan. You were late behind the start. Basingstoke knew like you guys could really just go out with no like they won 5 games last year. Like you guys can go out and just take a swing at this year, and it's that first year of a rebuild. Do you guys kind of feel like obviously you got that internal pressure, but do you feel pressure from the fans, or do you kind of think the fans are just happy that they have a club still to go watch every week, and that they have a club that's still in the top flight of UK? Because obviously it was talked about that there was potential. It was they were going to join Solway and be the second Scottish team in that National League. So do you think like you've got to win more games than last year? I think you've got to be pushing for the playoffs to order it to be like a really successful season. But in order like in a viewpoint from the coach, is it kind of a mulligan? Like you get to have a big free swing at this year and see what you can do?
Our approach has not been it's a mulligan, and Max is competitive. I'm competitive. We've got a room full of guys that are competitive. We've got a phenomenal fan base that is passionate. They want to see a winner here. I get that. We've had some challenges that we've had to overcome, whether you're talking about the summer, whether you're talking about the start of the year with different factors. None of that matters. We want to get better every week, and we want to be a team that has success, and we want to be a team that this community is really proud of, and we're working hard, and we're going to get there.
Coach, this has been an awesome interview. I thank you very much for taking up so much of your time. Five Flyers fans, this has been getting to know your coach a little bit better. We wish you and the club, all the boys, all the success going forward. I would love to see Fife being in there battling for a playoff spot and, upset some of these big dogs along the way.
Thanks, Nick. It was great talking to you. Had a blast, and thanks for having me.
Anytime, my friend. Ladies and gents, this has been 4,000 Counting. We will see you for another episode very, very soon. Peace.